All right, holiday parties are a great way to catch up with friends and family, but this time of year can be difficult for those on their sober recovery journey.
I spoke with Interim Chief Executive Officer at Gateway Foundation, Mark Turner, who shares how people can be inclusive to all guests this season.
Well, I think some of the biggest stressors are the same for everybody. There's a hustle and bustle. There's a lot of things on the to-do list, and we have to be in a lot of places. And so for people who have an alcohol use disorder, they are used to using alcohol as the solution to their stressors. And so when you're trying to not do that anymore, you've got to come up with another solution to manage and navigate life.
There are triggers every day, but I imagine those are much greater during this time of year because of the stress.
Absolutely, because there are a lot of parties, there are a lot of expectations, a lot of people, and a lot of get-togethers, and a lot of those involve having alcohol around. And so it's important that people who are hosting those always have an option for people to have a non-alcoholic beverage, to not be saying everybody has to have this drink, not pushing. If somebody says no thank you, we need to take them at their word and not make a big deal out of that.
Yeah, almost like if you're going to have the special cocktail, you have the mocktail next to it, so people have the option to choose.
Right, or just, water, club soda, Diet Coke. A lot of people just want to keep it very simple when they're trying to work sobriety.
Yeah, because there's got to be a number of things that hosts and hostesses need to think about when they're celebrating parties, because they might have someone who's dealing with something.
Right, and some people are more open about it than others, and they're happy to share their experience, but other people are very private about that, and they just want to navigate their own recovery journey.
Any tips for somebody who's planning to have, other than just making sure the right beverage is there? Are there ways to support folks when we're having parties?
Well, I think one of the things is to create a culture where there's not a lot of drinking games or everybody has to hold up their glass for a toast, as well as I think that when we're doing gift exchanges, if you can discourage people from White Elephant or Secret Santas that have alcohol, because you don't know who's going to end up with that gift and who that's not going to be appropriate for.
And then what do you suggest for family members or people out there who have people in their lives who are struggling with addiction during this time of year, whether they sought treatment or not?
Well, the reality is that you can't force somebody to change their behavior. All you can do is hold somebody accountable and encourage them that treatment is available and that treatment works.
I know we were talking a little bit about, you do see quite a bit more treatment as the year comes to an end and we start the new year. Is that more because people are recognizing their problem, or family members are intervening?
There are a variety of reasons why somebody would determine that it's time to get help with their alcohol problem. Certainly if they have had a new kind of bottom behavior, or they've been confronted by family members, or they've seen some other kinds of consequences. A recent study from the CDC showed that alcohol-related injury, illness, and deaths has gone up significantly over the last 2 years. So if somebody has experienced any of those by excessive drinking through the holidays, then they may be at a place where they've got the motivation with the support of their support systems to get help with their problem.
Any other tips for folks out there who might not be familiar with any type of addiction as we move into the holidays? So there's some things that might not seem very obvious to people who have not had it in their lives.
Well, I think that people who are suffering from the disease of addiction generally have a very inconsistent showing up in their lives. So they come late, they may come with a little bit of slur, lots of excuses, maybe they've run out of money, somebody else has to pay for things. And certainly, I think that one of the things that people need to be aware of is that if they've got a lot of people coming into their home, if they've got prescription drugs, they need to keep them to where other people can't pick them up and put them in their pocket, because people with an addiction will do that, because they'll do anything in order to get the needs of the disease met.
If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, you could reach out to Gateway Foundation. The information is right there on your screen.